The 22nd of June, 1940, Compiègne, France. After almost 70 years, the Third French Republic collapses under military defeat, and a new regime is born after the country signs an armistice with Nazi Germany. The new Vichy government pledges neutrality but soon becomes a willing collaborator, suppressing resistance, sending French workers to Nazi factories, and enforcing anti-Jewish laws. In March 1941, the Vichy collaborationist government creates a central agency, the General Commissariat for Jewish Affairs, to coordinate anti-Jewish legislation and policy. Anxious to ensure that material goods and assets confiscated from the Jewish population do not fall into German hands, in July 1941 they institute an extensive program of Aryanization, appropriating Jewish-owned property for the French state. However, for many Jews in France, this is only the first measure before they are deported and murdered in Nazi death camps. Among the deportees is a woman who belongs to one of the richest families in the world. Her name is Élisabeth de Rothschild. Élisabeth Pelletier de Chambure, known as Lily, was born on the 9th of March 1902 in Paris, in France. Her parents were wealthy Catholics, and the family's ancestors included the Napoleonic general Laurent-Augustin Pelletier de Chambure, who took part in Napoleon's campaigns in Prussia, Poland, and Spain. In 1923, Elizabeth married Marc de Becker-Remy, the son of a Belgian aristocrat. Their son Edouard was born in the following year. In 1933, while still married to Marc, Elizabeth gave birth to a daughter named Philippine Mathilde Camille, whose father was the French Baron Philippe de Rothschild. Rothschild was not only a cousin by marriage of Elizabeth's husband Marc, but also a member of the prominent banking family and the owner of one of France's most famous vineyards, Château Mouton Rothschild in Pauillac in the Médoc. On the 22nd of January 1934, immediately after her divorce from Marc, Elizabeth married Philippe de Rothschild. She converted to Judaism, and the religious ceremony was conducted by Julien Weil, the Grand Rabbi of Paris. In addition to their daughter, the Rothschilds had a son. However, Charles-Henri, born in 1938, was seriously disabled and died shortly after his birth. The loss of this child put an end to what Philippe later described as a partnership of great passion, but also enormous tempestuousness and despair. They eventually separated acrimoniously, and by 1939, Elizabeth reverted to using her maiden name of Pelletier de Chambure. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The German invasion of France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands started on the 10th of May 1940 and became known as the Battle of France. Paris fell on the 14th of June, and 8 days later France signed an armistice with Germany, which went into effect on the 25th of June 1940. Hitler's map now showed a dark belt of occupied territory, stretching from the Arctic Circle to the Pyrenees, interrupted only by the pale patch of unoccupied southeastern France that the armistice left to the French administration, at least on paper. That pale patch soon became Vichy France, named for the spa town where the government installed itself. On the 10th of July 1940, the French National Assembly gave Marshal Pétain full powers to write a new constitution. In practice, no constitution ever appeared. Instead, decrees flowed from the old marshal and his ministers. The Republican motto, liberty, equality, fraternity, was scrubbed from public buildings and replaced by work, family, fatherland. Civil servants removed busts of Marianne, the symbol of the Republic, and hung the marshal's portrait in their offices. Pétain soon began blaming the Third Republic's democracy, which ended with the fall of France, and endemic corruption for France's humiliating defeat by Germany. Accordingly, his government soon began taking on authoritarian characteristics. Democratic liberties and guarantees were immediately suspended. The crime of opinion was established, effectively repealing freedom of thought and expression, and critics were frequently arrested. Collaboration took varying shapes. Economists bargained over wheat deliveries to the Reich. Police prefects hunted refugees and resistance fighters, and lawyers drafted laws that excluded Jews from public life. Among the victims of this new order was also Élisabeth and her estranged husband, who were arrested by the Vichy government, which also seized their vineyard property. However, they were then released. Philippe fled France, moving to England, joining the Free French forces and supporting General Charles de Gaulle. Élisabeth, having been born Catholic and from an old French family, did not believe she would be in any danger and remained in France together with their daughter Philippine. However, she was wrong. Élisabeth was first arrested in 1941 for allegedly trying to cross the demarcation line with a false identity document in her maiden name, Chambure. Allegedly, Fernand de Brinon, a high official in the collaborationist Vichy regime, secured her release. In June 1940, when France surrendered to Germany, there were approximately 350,000 Jews in the country. Following the Wannsee Conference on the 20th of January 1942, German authorities prepared for the deportation of Jews from France and other Western European countries. An initial transport of more than 1,000 Jews left from Compiègne for Auschwitz on the 27th of March 1942. By August 1944, some 77,000 Jews living on French territory perished in concentration camps and killing centers, the overwhelming majority of them at Auschwitz, or died in detention on French soil. The Allied landing in Normandy on the 6th of June 1944 initiated the liberation of France. The French resistance played a significant role in aiding Allied armies in this effort, and less than 3 months later, on the 25th of August 1944, German forces in Paris surrendered. On the following day, General Charles de Gaulle, leader of the Free French forces and president of the Provisional Government of the French Republic, marched triumphantly into the French capital. However, for Élisabeth, the liberation came too late. She had been arrested by the Nazi secret police, the Gestapo, according to various accounts in May or June 1944. The reasons for her arrest are unclear. One story says that Élisabeth was arrested because she had organized a charity event on behalf of the Jews rounded up in the Drancy transit camp on their way to be deported. According to another story, the Gestapo was trying to find out about her estranged husband's activities in exile. An alternative story has it that attending a showing of Italian couturier Elsa Schiaparelli's new seasonal designs, Élisabeth found herself seated next to Suzanne Abetz, the wife of German ambassador to the Vichy government, Heinrich Otto Abetz. Finding her proximity to Abetz's wife objectionable, Élisabeth changed seats, a social slight which offended Suzanne Abetz. When in June 1944 the Gestapo arrested Élisabeth, her 10-year-old daughter Philippine was with her. The two Gestapo officers fought over taking Philippine along with her mother, but one officer argued that he had a daughter the same age back home, so they left her alone. She was never to see her mother again. On the 15th of August 1944 at 11 p.m., Élisabeth was deported on a train which was the last convoy of political deportees to leave the Paris region before the liberation of the French capital. It was also the largest transport of prisoners ever organized in France by the German occupiers. The convoy, which the French resistance attempted unsuccessfully to stop, included 1,654 men and 543 women. 85% of the deportees were French, followed by American, British, and Canadian prisoners. They were mainly French resistance fighters, but also Allied airmen whose planes were shot down over France, British agents from the Special Operations Executive Organization, and others. Almost 2,200 people were bound for the Nazi concentration camps in Germany. Men were to be sent to Buchenwald and women to Ravensbrück camp located 90 kilometers north of Berlin. The men entered Buchenwald on the 20th of August 1944. Then the convoy departed, passed through Halle and Berlin, and on the 21st of August 1944, the women, including Élisabeth, arrived in Ravensbrück, which was the only major women's camp established by the Nazis. In total, some 132,000 women from all over Europe passed through the Ravensbrück concentration camp, including Poles, Russians, Jews, Romani people, and others. Of that number, over 92,000 women perished. When the camp was liberated by the Red Army on the 30th of April 1945, there were about 3,500 sick women, men, and children in the camp. However, Élisabeth was not among them. She reportedly died of epidemic typhus on the 23rd of March 1945. 1 month before the liberation. However, according to the memoirs of her husband Philippe, the 43-year-old Élisabeth had been thrown alive into a Ravensbrück crematoria oven. Her children, however, did survive the war. Élisabeth's son Edouard died in 1984, and her daughter Philippine died in 2014 at the age of 80. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.